Imagine waking up daily, feeling the world's weight pressing down with its problems, news, opinions, and obligations. Now, picture instead rising like the great Stoics did, with complete control over your mind, ready to face any challenge and turn every moment into a personal triumph. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca weren't superheroes living in a peaceful bubble. They were leaders in chaotic times, and their secret was simple yet profound. Mastering the morning meant mastering life itself. Today, I'll show you how to harness that same power from the instant you open your eyes. This isn't about catchy phrases or empty routines. Here you'll uncover the strategies Stoics employed to conquer anxiety, criticism, discomfort, and the fear of losing everything. If you've ever felt your day slipping away, this video is your wake-up call. Stick around until the end, as each piece of advice is a practical tool to help you stop reacting and start leading your own life. If you dare to change your mornings, I promise your entire life will follow suit. Before diving into these insights, do yourself a favor. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss any future lessons that can reshape your mind and destiny. Are you ready to stop being a spectator and become the protagonist of your days? Let's begin. Master your mind, the power of Stoic mornings. In the quiet of dawn, when the city still stirs and the world seems to pause, a battle unfolds that few acknowledge, but all confront: the struggle against one's own mind. There are no witnesses, no applause, no visible enemies here, just you, your thoughts, and the decision of who will take charge. While most people wake up and immediately fall into the trap of chaos, checking messages, fretting over what they can't change, and letting urgency dictate their pace, the Stoic pauses, not because they have more time or fewer problems, but because they understand that true power lies in that initial moment, in the ability to govern the mind before the day sweeps it away. Stoicism, more than an ancient philosophy, is an art of living that teaches how to transform each morning into a training ground for the mind. Great Stoics, such as Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, knew that the day isn't won by reacting to events, but by intentionally preparing for what lies ahead. That's why their morning routines weren't mere habits, but rituals of fortitude. They woke early, sought tranquility before the storm, and meditated on what truly mattered. Thus, the Stoic not only prepares to face the world, but strengthens themselves from within, building a mind capable of weathering any tempest. The key to this power lies in a fundamental Stoic principle, distinguishing between what is within our control and what is not. Upon waking, the Stoic asks themselves what they can genuinely decide and what they must accept. They don't waste energy battling traffic, the weather, or others' opinions because they know these things are beyond their influence. Instead, they direct their energy toward their attitude, thoughts, and actions. This clarity allows them to start the day with a sense of freedom as they cease to be enslaved by external factors and become masters of themselves. This isn't indifference, but practical wisdom. They only concern themselves with what they can change. Mastering the Stoic mind isn't an act of magic or a matter of instant willpower. It's the result of daily practice, of small victories repeated each morning. The Stoic understands that they cannot change deep-seated reactions overnight, but they can work on them, observe them, and gradually mold their character. Each time they choose to respond with calm instead of giving in to anger, each time they decide to be grateful instead of complaining, they strengthen their spirit. Thus, mastering the mind becomes a patient construction, a work built brick by brick, day after day. Applying Stoicism in the mornings is not just a way to start the day well, but a declaration of intent for life. It's deciding that, come what may, the true battlefield is within oneself. It's choosing clarity over confusion, action over reaction, and virtue over whim. When each dawn becomes an opportunity to train the mind, one's entire life transforms. The Stoic doesn't seek perfect mornings, but conscious mornings, where every thought and action brings them closer to inner freedom. Thus, mastering the mind upon waking is not just a goal, but the beginning of a path of strength, serenity, and authentic personal power. Reclaim your power. Discern what's within your grasp. At the core of Stoicism lies a simple yet potent truth: the distinction between what you can control and what you cannot. Every morning, before being swept into the whirlwind of news, messages, and obligations, the Stoic practitioner pauses and confronts a fundamental question: What is truly within my control today? This reflection, seemingly simple, acts as a barrier separating serenity from frustration. It's not about resignation but wisdom. The Stoic understands that weather, traffic, the economy, or others' opinions are external forces, impossible to command. If their happiness depended on these, they would be condemned to a life of anxiety and disappointment. True mastery begins when one chooses to focus their energy on what they can transform, their attitude, their decisions, and their responses to circumstances. Imagine an unexpected problem arises during the day. The natural impulse might be to react with anger or despair, but the Stoic chooses calm and determination. This choice, repeated each morning, is what forges a resilient character and a focused spirit. Marcus Aurelius, a towering figure in Stoicism, was clear: you have power over your mind, not over external events. In that recognition lies the strength to navigate any storm without losing balance. The daily practice of distinguishing between what's controllable and uncontrollable transforms how one lives. As this exercise is repeated each morning, the mind trains itself to stop being a victim of circumstances. Energy is no longer wasted trying to change what's beyond reach, nor is there suffering over what doesn't depend on oneself. Instead, an unwavering serenity is cultivated, along with the ability to act with purpose even amid chaos. This Stoic mindset allows for clarity and strength when others become lost in confusion. Adopting this Stoic perspective doesn't mean becoming indifferent to the world, but rather taking radical responsibility for one's own life. Each morning becomes an opportunity to choose the attitude with which the day will be faced. One learns to respond, not to react. Blame of others or circumstances ceases, and one takes the helm of their own existence. Thus, the Stoic not only survives daily challenges, but uses them as training to fortify their character and mind. When this practice becomes a habit, life changes fundamentally. An inner freedom is experienced that nothing and no one can snatch away. The world may be unpredictable, but the mastery of the mind remains intact. Each morning, by remembering what is in your hands and what is not, you reclaim control of the only thing that truly matters, your own mind. And in that control lies true Stoic power, enabling you to live with serenity and purpose, regardless of what happens externally. Define your purpose. Don't let others dictate your path. In the journey of Stoicism, waking up without a clear purpose is like sailing without a compass in a storm. Stoics understood that life, by its very nature, is full of distractions, external demands, and voices attempting to dictate the course of our days. If one doesn't define their purpose at the start of the day, they will inevitably end up following someone else's script, losing energy on tasks that lead nowhere significant. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, began each morning by asking himself what was truly important, thereby preventing his time from dissolving into trivialities. It's not about filling the day with an endless to-do list, but about establishing a firm, conscious direction. For the Stoic, purpose isn't just an abstract goal or a fleeting desire. It's the profound reason that gives meaning to every action and thought. The wise figures of this school believed that every human being has a natural function, a role to play in the grand order of the universe. Just as bees, ants, or trees fulfill their tasks and contribute to the world's balance, humans too must discover what they were created for. Finding that purpose is like lighting a star in the dark night. It illuminates the path, gives meaning to every step, and transforms even difficult days into opportunities for growth. Living with purpose doesn't mean every day will be easy, or that motivation will be constant. Even the great Stoics faced days when their will faltered and inspiration seemed absent. But that's where purpose becomes the driving force to get up and keep going. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that he was not born for pleasure, but for the work of man, to serve and contribute to the common good. Purpose is not only personal, it connects the individual with society, giving them a sense of belonging and responsibility. On gloomy days, remembering that mission is what allows one to overcome laziness and demotivation. Stoic discipline is built upon a well-defined purpose. Without it, even the noblest objectives can crumble in the face of temptation or difficulty. Purpose is the anchor that keeps character steady and the compass that guides every decision. When a challenge or an unpleasant task arises, the Stoic doesn't ask if they feel like facing it, but why they are doing it and what they would lose if they gave up. This clarity allows them to distinguish between the urgent and the important, always prioritizing what brings them closer to their greater goal. Thus, every action, no matter how small, integrates into a larger, more coherent plan. In a world that values immediacy and instant gratification, living with purpose is an act of rebellion and virtue. It is refusing to be swept away by the superficial current and committing to a deeper sense of existence. The Stoic knows that true success is not measured by the accumulation of possessions or external approval, but by faithfulness to their purpose and contribution to the common good. Each day is a new opportunity to reaffirm that commitment and advance, even if just one step toward the best version of oneself. Thus, purpose is not just an idea, it is the engine that transforms one's entire life. Embrace discomfort, fortify your spirit. Comfort, that sanctuary we all yearn for, can quietly morph into a silent trap that weakens character and dulls willpower. The Stoics knew this better than anyone. They didn't seek suffering for pleasure, but they understood that an overly easy life poorly prepares the spirit for life's inevitable blows. That's why, each morning, the Stoic deliberately aimed to step out of their comfort zone. It wasn't an act of masochism, but a strategy for building strength. Those who never face cold, hunger, discomfort, or scarcity become fragile and dependent on external factors. Conversely, those who train their mind and body to tolerate discomfort become invincible in the face of real difficulties. Great Stoic masters like Seneca recommended practicing voluntary discomfort, wearing simple clothes, fasting, exposing oneself to cold, or periodically depriving oneself of luxuries. By doing so, they not only demonstrated they could live with less, but also shattered the fear of losing what they had. This practice wasn't punishment, but a reminder that happiness and inner peace don't depend on external circumstances, but on internal fortitude. Thus, when life took something away, it didn't surprise or destroy them. They were already prepared because they had trained their minds to resist and adapt. In today's world, where instant gratification and the constant pursuit of pleasure dominate every corner of life, the Stoic message rings more urgently than ever. Modern society pushes us to avoid any pain or discomfort, but this habit only creates weak minds and insecure hearts. The Stoic, however, consciously chooses to expose themselves to small daily challenges. This could be a cold shower upon waking, a more frugal breakfast, walking instead of driving, or dedicating time to silence and reflection instead of diving into digital distractions. Every act of voluntary discomfort is another brick in the construction of a firm and resilient mind. What seems like a simple annoyance transforms over time into a source of confidence and freedom. The Stoic learns that they can endure much more than they imagined. They discover internal resources they perhaps didn't know they possessed and learn to value what they have in the present. When unexpected problems arise, they no longer react with panic or despair, but with serenity and clarity. They know that discomfort is fleeting, but the strength built by facing it remains forever. Thus, each morning transforms into life training, an opportunity to fortify character and prepare for any adversity. This attitude not only changes one's relationship with pain or scarcity, but transforms the way one lives. The Stoic stops fearing loss, criticism, or failure because they know they can resist and adapt. Voluntary discomfort becomes a declaration of independence from circumstances. One is no longer a slave to pleasure or a hostage to fear. They are master of themselves, capable of enduring cold, solitude, or difficulty without losing inner peace. Thus, discomfort ceases to be an enemy and becomes the best teacher, one that forges the spirit and reveals the true strength of the mind. Envision the worst, prepare for anything. At the core of Stoicism lies a powerful and, for many, perplexing practice, the visualization of worst-case scenarios, known as premeditatio malorum. This custom doesn't aim to attract misfortune or fuel pessimism, but rather to train the mind so that, in the face of any adversity, it doesn't crumble, but instead acts with serenity and clarity. The Stoic understands that life is unpredictable and that no plan, however perfect it may seem, is free of obstacles. Therefore, each morning, they dedicate a few minutes to vividly imagine what could go wrong: a loss, criticism, failure, unexpected news. They do not do this to live in fear, but to mentally prepare and reduce the emotional impact if any of these situations actually occur. This conscious anticipation of difficulties transforms fear into strategy. When one allows themselves to mentally walk the most challenging paths, they cease to be a victim of surprise and become a warrior prepared for any battle. The Stoic does not avoid reality or deceive themselves with false hopes. They look squarely at the possibility of losing what they have, suffering betrayal or facing a crisis, and ask themselves how they would react if that happened. Thus, when life strikes, the mind has already traversed that terrain and doesn't freeze. Anxiety transforms into action, and fear into an opportunity to demonstrate strength. Far from being a depressing practice, premeditatio malorum is liberating. By imagining the worst, the Stoic realizes that in most cases, they can endure much more than they fear. They discover internal resources they might not have known they had, and learn to value what they possess in the present. If fortune smiles and none of what was feared occurs, they feel gratitude and humility. If, on the other hand, adversity presents itself, it doesn't catch them by surprise or destroy them, because they have already prepared for that challenge. This attitude doesn't eliminate pain, but it makes it more manageable and less terrifying. In daily life, this technique can be applied before an important meeting, an exam, a difficult conversation, or any situation that generates anxiety. The Stoic asks, what's the worst that can happen? How could I face it? What resources do I have at my disposal? By answering these questions, the mind calms and the body relaxes. Worry ceases to be an invisible monster and transforms into a concrete problem with possible solutions. Thus, visualizing the worst doesn't paralyze, but empowers and prepares one to act with intelligence and courage. The greatest benefit of this practice is mental freedom. The Stoic no longer lives avoiding pain or loss, but accepts them as an inevitable part of existence. In doing so, they become less vulnerable to the manipulation of fear and more capable of enjoying the present fully. Premeditatio malorum is not an invitation to sadness, but a tool for self-defense and growth. Those who practice it learn to live without fear, with their feet on the ground and their minds ready for any turn of fate. Embrace mortality, live with urgency. Stoicism has never shied away from the most inevitable reality of all, death. While most people prefer to ignore the passage of time, Stoics confront it directly and transform it into their greatest source of power. Memento mori, remember that you will die, is not a dark or pessimistic phrase, but an urgent reminder that life is finite and every day counts. For the Stoic, awareness of death is not a condemnation, but the spark that ignites the desire to live with intensity and purpose. By keeping the finiteness of existence in mind, one learns to value every moment, to not postpone what's important, and to stop wasting time on trivial concerns. In daily practice, Stoics reminded themselves that death could arrive at any moment. This reflection did not fill them with fear, but with gratitude and determination. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, began his days by remembering that time is a dwindling resource and there is no guarantee of seeing another dawn. Thus, every conversation, every decision, and every action became imbued with meaning. Knowing that the end is certain frees the spirit from procrastination and the fear of taking risks. The Stoic does not put off until tomorrow what can be done today, because they understand that tomorrow is only a possibility, not a promise. Modern society, obsessed with youth and the denial of aging, avoids discussing death as if ignoring it could postpone it. But Stoics see in the acceptance of mortality an inexhaustible source of courage and clarity. When one accepts that everything is transient, they learn to let go of grudges, to apologize, to say, "I love you" unreservedly, and to act with urgency on their dreams and projects. Death, far from being an enemy, becomes the best counselor. It teaches us to prioritize, to discard the superficial, and to focus on what truly matters. Living with memento mori is not living in sadness, but in fullness. The Stoic appreciates the beauty of the ephemeral and understands that precisely because life ends, every moment has incalculable value. This perspective transforms daily routine into an opportunity to grow, love, and leave a positive mark on the world. The fear of death dissolves when one lives with purpose, because each day becomes a victory over oblivion and an affirmation of one's own existence. Incorporating reflection on mortality into one's mornings is, for the Stoic, a call to action. It is asking, am I using this day as if it were my last? Am I leaving anything unsaid, undone, untried? By answering honestly, a new energy awakens, a serene urgency that pushes one to live without regrets. Thus, the Stoic transforms the certainty of death into the most powerful engine for an authentic, courageous, and profoundly meaningful life. Command your reactions. Impulsivity is your foe. In the Stoic universe, true strength isn't measured by how quickly one responds, but by the ability to pause and choose the optimal reaction. Today's world bombards us with constant stimuli, messages, notifications, opinions, and problems that demand an immediate response. The natural tendency is to be swept away by the emotion of the moment, reacting without thought, sometimes with anger, other times with fear or frustration. But the Stoic, far from falling into this trap, cultivates the art of the pause. They know that impulsivity is a silent enemy that can destroy relationships, ruin decisions, and steal inner peace. Great Stoic teachers taught that while we cannot control what happens to us, we do have the power to decide how we respond. Emotions, however intense, are not chains that force us to act without reflection. The Stoic observes their feelings, acknowledges them, and then chooses their response from reason and perspective, not from impulse. This small gap between stimulus and action is where true freedom resides. By practicing the pause, one gains clarity and avoids falling into the cycle of regrets that comes with rushed reactions. Daily life is full of situations that test this self-control. Unexpected criticism, bad news, a family argument, or a setback at work can ignite the fuse of anger or anxiety. However, the Stoic trains themselves daily not to be swept away by the emotional storm. Instead of responding immediately, they breathe, observe, and ask themselves, does this reaction bring me closer to the person I want to be? Am I acting from virtue or from a wounded ego? This exercise, repeated each morning, strengthens the mind and gives the spirit an unshakable resilience. Stoic self-control is not repression or coldness, but practical wisdom. It is understanding that every emotion has its place, but it should not govern our actions. When one learns to stop before acting, challenges transform into opportunities to grow and act with integrity. Thus, calm becomes a powerful tool, capable of diffusing conflicts before they erupt and opening paths where there were once only obstacles. The Stoic does not seek to eliminate emotions, but to use them as signals to act with greater awareness and purpose. Living this way radically changes one's relationship with the world and oneself. The mind stops being a battleground dominated by impulses and becomes a space of clarity and decision. Inner peace is not the result of avoiding problems, but of knowing how to respond to them with wisdom. Each day, by practicing the pause and choosing the best reaction, the Stoic moves a little closer to true freedom, the kind that does not depend on circumstances, but on absolute mastery over one's own mind. Release the need for approval. Own your worth. In modern life, where every gesture and word can be judged and commented on in seconds, the pressure to seek others' approval has become an invisible burden that consumes many people's freedom and authenticity. The Stoics, centuries before social media and image culture, already warned about the danger of living dependent on external validation. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, taught that deep slavery lies in external approval. When one entrusts their personal worth to the judgment of others, they become a prisoner of shifting expectations and opinions they can never fully control. Stoicism proposes a radical break from this dependence. For Stoics, true inner peace and happiness cannot depend on what others think or say. The key is to focus life on what one can control, their own actions, values, and integrity. This isn't about ignoring others or becoming insensitive, but about understanding that external opinion is just that, an opinion, and that the most important judgment is the one one makes of oneself. If each morning one acts according to their own principles and seeks moral excellence, external approval ceases to be a necessity and becomes secondary, almost irrelevant. Epictetus insisted that the pursuit of fame or the fear of disapproval are traps that distance human beings from true freedom. One who lives to please everyone ends up losing themselves, adapting their behavior and dreams to what others expect. The result is a life full of anxiety, insecurity, and emptiness, because external approval is always volatile. It may be present today and gone tomorrow. The Stoic, however, cultivates a quiet indifference towards praise and criticism, accepting both with serenity and without letting them affect their self-esteem. Thus, self-confidence is strengthened, and a solid identity is built based on virtue and not on external opinion. This attitude doesn't mean rejecting advice or constructive criticism, but learning to discern what adds value and what merely seeks to manipulate or please. The Stoic listens, reflects, and decides whether what they receive from others is useful for their personal growth, but they never allow their worth to depend on others' approval or rejection. The goal is to seek the approval of one's own ideal self, that version of oneself that acts with wisdom, justice, courage, and discipline. By aligning life with these principles, an internal satisfaction is achieved that no criticism can destroy and no praise can artificially inflate. Freeing oneself from the need for approval is an act of courage and maturity. It is choosing to live according to one's own values, even if that means going against the current or facing rejection. The Stoic knows that true freedom lies in the coherence between what one thinks, feels, and does. When one stops begging for external validation and becomes the owner of their own worth, they experience a profound tranquility and an inner strength that allows them to face any challenge. Thus, each day is lived with authenticity, without fear of external judgment, and with the certainty of building a life true to oneself. Write for clarity. The Stoic Journal. For the Stoics, the act of writing was far more than a simple habit or a way to record daily events. It was a fundamental tool for training the mind, organizing thoughts, and strengthening character. Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's greatest exponents, used his journal as a refuge for reflection and self-knowledge. He didn't write for posterity or to impress anyone. He did it for himself, to observe his emotions, analyze his decisions, and recall his principles when the outside world threatened to overwhelm him. On each page, he found an opportunity to reconnect with his purpose and reaffirm his commitment to virtue. The Stoic Journal is a space of brutal honesty, where one can pour out doubts, fears, and small victories without fear of judgment. Writing allows for distance from intense emotions and for viewing problems with a more serene perspective. When the mind is clouded by anxiety or confusion, the paper becomes a mirror reflecting clarity and order. By putting thoughts down, worries cease to be invisible monsters and transform into concrete challenges, much easier to face. Thus, daily writing becomes an act of self-mastery, a practice that strengthens the spirit and prepares one for any adversity. The discipline of writing each morning helps identify behavioral patterns, recognize recurring errors, and celebrate progress, however small. The Stoic uses the journal to examine their intentions before acting, to question whether their decisions align with their values and whether they are responding to life with virtue or being swept away by reactivity. This practice not only improves self-understanding, but also increases the ability to anticipate difficulties and mentally prepare for the day's challenges. The journal thus becomes a personal map, a guide that provides direction even in the most uncertain moments. Furthermore, the Stoic Journal is a constant reminder of what truly matters. In a world full of distractions and external demands, writing allows one to return to their center, remember their principles, and avoid getting lost in superficiality. Each written reflection is an opportunity to reaffirm commitment to wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. When life gets complicated and emotions threaten to take control, reading one's own words written on clearer days can be the anchor that prevents shipwreck in chaos. It doesn't matter whether one writes a lot or a little, or if it's done with long sentences or simple notes. The essential thing is consistency and honesty. The Stoic Journal is an act of humility and courage because it forces one to confront oneself without masks or excuses. It is ultimately a tool for personal transformation that anyone can adopt, regardless of age or experience. By making writing a morning habit, the Stoic arms themselves with clarity, purpose, and a mind prepared to master the day, no matter what happens. Cultivate gratitude. True wealth is your perspective. In Stoic philosophy, gratitude is not just a fleeting emotion, but a profound and conscious attitude that completely transforms the way one experiences each day. For Stoics, beginning the morning with gratitude is a declaration of independence from the constant craving for more and the dissatisfaction that plagues so many. It means looking around and unreservedly acknowledging the value of what you already possess, from health to small daily opportunities, including relationships and the simple possibility of a new dawn. This attitude doesn't arise from ignoring problems, but from accepting reality as it is, with its light and shadows, and finding reasons within it to be grateful and to grow. Stoic gratitude extends far beyond simply giving thanks for the good. It implies accepting difficulties and adversities as well, recognizing that every experience, even the toughest, contains a valuable lesson. Marcus Aurelius and Seneca taught that life is governed by forces we cannot always control, but we can choose how we respond to them. Being grateful for challenges is an act of courage because it means seeing them as an opportunity to strengthen character and practice virtue. Thus, gratitude becomes a powerful tool to cultivate inner serenity and resilience, allowing the mind to remain steadfast in any circumstance. By practicing gratitude each morning, the Stoic develops a perspective of abundance that doesn't depend on the quantity of possessions or achievements, but on the ability to appreciate what is already present. Seneca summarized it by saying that one is not poor who has little, but one who desires more. This view frees one from the endless cycle of desire and comparison and helps to focus on what is essential. When one is grateful for what they have, the heart fills with peace and anxiety about what is missing diminishes. Gratitude, then, is the foundation of true wealth, the wealth of character, wisdom, and contentment with simplicity. The daily practice of gratitude also has a direct impact on relationships and emotional well-being. Appreciating and expressing gratitude to others strengthens bonds, creates deeper connections, and fosters an atmosphere of respect and generosity. Furthermore, gratitude acts as an antidote to envy and complaint, emotions that only drain and distance one from inner peace. Stoics recommended dedicating a few minutes each morning to reflect on what one is grateful for by writing it down or simply recalling it in silence. This simple act can change the tone of the entire day, preparing the mind to face challenges with a positive and open attitude. Living with gratitude from a Stoic perspective is embracing the fullness of the present and ceasing to postpone happiness until certain desires are met. It is understanding that genuine satisfaction does not come from accumulating more, but from deeply valuing what is already part of one's life. Thus, each morning becomes an opportunity to reconnect with the abundance that already exists and to walk lightly without the burden of insatiable desire. Gratitude, consistently practiced, is the secret to finding joy and serenity in the small things, and to building a fuller, more resilient life in harmony with the highest principles of Stoicism. Banish complaint. Your first thought shapes your day. Complaint is one of those silent habits that, without you realizing it, saps your energy and mental clarity from the very first moments of your day. For the Stoic, complaining isn't just a waste of time, it's a surrender of personal power. When you wake up and the first thing you do is lament the weather, your job, your tiredness, or any discomfort, you're planting seeds of dissatisfaction and helplessness in your mind. That initial negative thought becomes the dominant tone of your day, conditioning your attitude and your ability to face challenges with serenity and determination. Stoicism teaches that external events don't harm us, but rather the judgment we make about them. If you choose to start the day complaining, you position yourself as a victim of circumstances and surrender your freedom to what you cannot control. Marcus Aurelius was clear: what truly affects you is not what happens, but how you choose to interpret it. Perpetual complaining keeps you focused on what you lack, what isn't working, what's beyond your reach. Thus, you lose sight of everything you do have and everything you can transform with your attitude and actions. The Stoic practice proposes a radical shift. Instead of being dragged down by negativity, cultivate inner silence and active gratitude. Not every thought deserves to be spoken, and not every discomfort requires a complaint. Upon waking, pause consciously and choose to focus your mind on what does work, what you do have, what you can be grateful for. Seneca wisely summarized it: one is not happy who has everything, but one who is content with what they have. This exercise isn't naive optimism, it's a strategy for mental strength. Each time you choose gratitude instead of complaining, you train your mind to seek solutions and recognize the opportunities the day offers. Constant complaining, besides draining your energy, contaminates your environment. It's a contagious habit that weakens the morale of those around you and creates an atmosphere where dissatisfaction multiplies. The Stoic, however, becomes an example of temperance and resilience. Faced with an adverse situation, they don't ask why me, but what can I do with this? If something depends on you, act. If it doesn't, accept and move on. Transforming complaint into action or acceptance is one of the greatest powers you can develop to live with peace and purpose. Ultimately, your first thought in the morning is like the rudder that steers the course of your day. If you choose complaint, you'll navigate turbulent waters of frustration and passivity. If you choose gratitude and acceptance, you open yourself to a day of clarity, energy, and personal mastery. Stoicism doesn't deny difficulties, but it teaches you to face them with courage and wisdom, starting with the simple act of deciding how you will think and feel in the first few minutes of your day. Make that moment a declaration of power, and you'll see how your entire day transforms. If you've made it this far, you now know that each morning is far more than just the start of a new day. It's your chance to take control, to stop living on autopilot, and to become the architect of your own destiny. The Stoics were no strangers to challenges, fear, or uncertainty, but neither were they slaves to their impulses or external opinions. They understood that true freedom begins when you decide to master your mind from the first minute, when you choose to act with purpose, gratitude, and courage, and when you refuse to let complaint or haste define your path. Today, you've seen that the power of your mornings isn't in a perfect routine or in avoiding problems, but in the attitude with which you face them. Every time you practice voluntary discomfort, write to clarify your ideas, appreciate what you have, and mentally prepare for any adversity, you are training your spirit to endure and grow. It's not about seeking perfection, but about moving forward with resolve, learning to respond instead of react, and remembering that life is finite and deserves to be lived with intensity and meaning. Stoicism isn't just an ancient philosophy. It's a daily invitation to be your own master, to stop seeking permission to be happy, and to find strength in every challenge. If you apply these teachings, not only will your mornings change, but your entire life will. Don't let the world decide for you. Take responsibility for your attitude, your purpose, and your inner peace. Each day is a new battle, and you have the tools to win it. So if this message resonated with you, don't leave without making your mark. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to not miss future content. Share this video with someone who needs to start their days with more clarity and strength. Remember, transformation begins today, one Stoic morning at a time. See you.